Jujutsu Kaisen has accomplished a lot of great feats during its weekly run within Shonen Jump, destroying records, creating arguably the most popular character of the decade with a cast of characters who are just as interesting as he is, and I can go on about this forever, but you get the point. Jujutsu Kaisen did something pretty unique to me that most people just did not acknowledge recently, and this is to take the Talk no Jutsu formula that I honestly love, despite how most people feel about it, and do it in one of the best ways that I've seen in a while, making it much better than it already is. If you're unaware, Talk no Jutsu is basically talking sense into a friend or an opponent, and the intention behind talking sense usually depends on the context of the situation, but this phrase came from the Naruto fandom after Naruto would do this in order to understand his opponents, and vice versa many times. In this video, I'll speak about Jujutsu Kaisen's Talk no Jutsu by going over the talk between Yuji and Megumi, why I think it was executed in the best way possible within the context of the story, and how Gege managed to plant the seeds of this Talk no Jutsu being executed the way it was a long time ago. With that said, if you enjoy videos such as this, don't forget to leave a like and subscribe to help the boy out, and now, let's get into it. Before we get into the core of the video, I believe we should first tackle the context and the setup of the Talk no Jutsu. Very early into the series, there would be an arc that revolved around Gojo, and how he became to define his purpose, creating a group of sorcerers that would never be alone. This arc was the perfect preparation arc. It followed both Gojo and Geto, his best friend. In this arc, they'd be introduced as a duo that was referred to as the strongest. When together, nothing could stand in their way. This would be the case until the two were placed on the most important mission of not only their lives, but in the entire world. This mission being to escort Rico Aminai, the star plasma vessel, to a certain location. To summarize the importance of the mission quickly, from the perspective of our characters, if they fail this, the world is basically screwed. They would have an easy time as the strongest duo, get to know and create a bond with Rico, and complete the mission. Well, almost. At the very end, Toji Fushiguro would assassinate Rico and defeat both Gojo and Geto in one-on-ones. They completely failed, and not only this, they lost someone that meant very much to them. Gojo manages to learn reverse curse technique, heal himself, and defeat Toji in a rematch. When the two sorcerers would go to collect Rico's corpse, they'd be met by tons of regular humans who were members of the cult that wanted Rico dead in order to prevent her from getting to the location to save the world. They would simply laugh and applaud in the face of our heroes, mocking them since they won in the end as they held the body of their dear friend. The purpose of a Jujutsu sorcerer is to protect the weak, but at this very moment, a teenage Gojo would ask Geto if he could kill all of the humans there, because he wouldn't feel a thing if he did. Geto, however, tells Gojo that they can't. It's just not the right thing to do, so they decide to leave. Geto, despite his emotional control, was greatly traumatized by this event. Sometime after, Gojo, due to his power-up, would be separated from Geto. They were both special grade sorcerers at this point and no longer needed a partner for their missions, as they can handle anything with ease alone, and this couldn't have been a greater mistake. A part of Geto's ability in the series is to eat curses in order to obtain them as familiars that he can use in battle. When he does this, the feeling and taste is similar to swallowing a rag soaked in puke. For him, it's torture. Every time Geto would go through this disgustingly excruciating feeling, he'd ask himself, "What am I doing this for?" And he'd remember the day those people mocked him at his worst moments, the same people that he puts himself at risk for every day. Geto would greatly accelerate his downward spiral from here on, as people he cherished would pass away, and he'd learn that regular humans play a role into the existence of curses. He'd end up as someone who hates regular humans and wants to exterminate all who cannot control curse energy at all cost. It didn't help that Toji himself had no curse energy either. Geto eventually lashes out and destroys an entire village of humans due to how they treated two child sorcerers as if they're monsters, and becomes designated as a curse user. In other words, a terrorist to be exterminated on sight. Gojo eventually locates Geto, and they have an argument about Geto's downward spiral and his plan to exterminate all non-sorcerers for the sake of eradicating all cursed spirits. Thing is, Gojo had no idea about Geto's downward spiral until it was too late to save him, so he'd walk away from their conversation being unable to kill him. When speaking to Yaga about the situation, he says, "It looks like just me being strong isn't enough. I can only save those who are prepared to be saved." Geto again was too far gone, and Gojo had no idea until he crossed the line that he couldn't be brought back from. This failure of his would cause him to lose his best friend and resolve to foster a strong and intelligent group. Nobody will ever be left alone again. We now move forward to the possession of Megumi. Sukuna has initiated his 200 chapter plan of taking over Megumi's body in order to utilize the 10 shadows and be free of the cage that is Yuji Itadori, and it's successful. Sukuna escapes and uses Megumi's body to slaughter Sumiki, his sister that he's revolved his entire life around protecting, and initiates the bath ritual to drown Megumi even further into despair, relinquishing more control of his body to Sukuna. As Sukuna's preparations are set, every sorcerer in the story wages war on him together, and he goes on to slaughter Gojo and many other sorcerers, likely drowning Megumi into further despair. Megumi at this point has nothing to live for. He reacts by simply curling into a ball and crying his eyes out within his own soul. Watching Sukuna eviscerate the people that he loves most, he's in a horrible state. Yuji, the hero of the story, enters the fight with the intention of not only defeating Sukuna, but releasing Megumi from his control through his ability to slowly split Sukuna and Megumi's souls with each strike that he lands. And as he gets stronger in the fight, he increases the strength of this ability and finds new ways to use it. And midway through the fight, Yuji would actually have a chance to reach into Megumi's soul and attempt to split him from Sukuna, telling him to wake up, but Megumi would cut him off, saying that's enough, rejecting Yuji's request for him to wake up and split Sukuna from himself. And this punishes Yuji greatly, with Sukuna getting the chance to land a slash that cuts him in half. The story here punishes Yuji for telling Megumi to wake up. Why? Because to the author, Gege Akutami, this isn't the way to help your friend at their lowest moments, and Yuji should know better. You don't really request anything from them in a situation such as this, although Yuji is not unreasonable for doing so, unlike Gojo was when speaking to Geto in my opinion. But the situations are similar enough from my perspective. Gojo told the viewer earlier that you can only save those who want to be saved, didn't he? As the fight reaches its climax, Yuji and Sukuna's souls would connect for one final time in the heat of battle. Before the final phase of their fight, Yuji wanted to share his perspective of life with Sukuna, showing him the livelihood of people that he deems as worthless, and at least give him one final chance of salvation. Yuji understands that Sukuna was simply born different. His brain is just wired differently, and that's why he pities him. Sukuna never had a chance to live a life in this world. While Yuji did show Sukuna what he believes to be the true value of both life and death, he also showed Megumi this as well. And although Yuji and Sukuna's final talk ends with Sukuna denying Yuji's request for him to return to his body and release Megumi so he can be spared, the very next chapter enters a talk between Yuji and Megumi. This is how we get to where we are now. Megumi denies Yuji's hand once more, telling him that he's done enough, sharing that all he's ever wanted was a simple life with Sumiki, and that's been lost. Yuji does nothing but listen, as Megumi says once more, "You've done enough." Yuji then attempts to connect to Megumi by speaking about his own grandfather and his experiences as a Jujutsu sorcerer. He thinks about how horrifying his own life has been since embarking on this journey, and how much pain his grandfather has endured. He goes on to tell Megumi something along the lines of, "That's why I have no right to tell you that you have to live." In the context of Jujutsu Kaisen, this has to be one of my favorite deliveries in the series. It embodies everything Gojo wanted out of the generation that he's nurtured, for them to all understand one another and to never leave anybody alone again. A lot of the Sukuna raid has moments that display Gojo succeeding in his goals with flying colors, and this is one of them. Yuji tells Megumi here that, "I can truly understand what you're dealing with, and it's not right for me to just tell you to wake up and come back. Whether you want to be saved or not is entirely up to you." As Yuji and Sukuna continue to fight, Yuji connects with Megumi's soul one last time, not to ask for his help, not to tell him to come back or anything like it, but to remind Megumi that he's loved and missed by the people that he has left behind. And this is what gives Megumi the push to finally help Yuji out, and let him know that he does want to be saved, and the fight soon wraps up after this. As Megumi's freed from his body, he acknowledges that the world has more people than just himself, and that he's going to give living for others one last try. I think it's important to understand that in the context of the conversation, Megumi's more so saying, "I'll take their hand," rather than literally living for them. I found this final moment between Yuji and Megumi to just be surprisingly strong for two reasons. First, it reinforces a powerful message. You can only save those who want to be saved, yes, but there's a bit more to it than that. Yuji letting Megumi know that he was cherished and loved despite losing the most important person in his life and being in the worst position possible is what allowed Megumi to give them the opportunity to actually save him. And not only this, it's again a callback to Gojo's failure to save Geto. Geto's downfall was primarily due to the isolation he went through after the most painful, crushing failure that he's ever experienced. The thoughts that clouded up his mind would have not been as present if he and Gojo remained partners, or if Gojo at least checked up on his friend instead of focusing on training and taking his own missions. Of course, you can't really blame Gojo, as that was probably the way he coped with his loss of Riko, and people just go on with their own lives. But despite that, there is a clear difference in how Yuji and Gojo went about saving their best friends. Yuji completely empathized with and understood Megumi, and then let him know that he's loved, whereas Gojo kind of threw a fit, called Geto's ideals BS, and he just overall shut down Geto. I think the intentions were clear with Gege's writing here, and Jujutsu Kaisen again pushes the value of empathy and relationships. Yuji meeting Megumi where he's at and then putting the ball in his court is what saved the entire world from Sukuna. I mean, judging from Megumi and Sukuna's final talk, Sukuna could have just taken the body right back had Megumi not wanted to live. In a way, to defeat Sukuna, they had to save Megumi. Strength wasn't only required to save the world, but being a good friend was. Another thing I like about how this talk no jutsu is done is that it puts the ball in Megumi's court. It makes him more than just a damsel in distress. Megumi had to play an active role and grow as a person in order for this entire thing to work. To me, it felt as if Megumi managed to get saved while also regaining a ton of agency as a person and a character. It wasn't as simple as, come on, it's okay, bro. All the characters had to meet on the same page, and then Megumi had to take the lead of his own rescue and choose to actively refuse Sukuna at the end, rather than Yuji just punching Sukuna out of him like he tried in 251. It serves as a message to those who are trying to help others and those who need to be helped. That just about wraps up my thoughts on the talk no jutsu used by Yuji. I found it to be quite special due to the lesson of this talk between the two characters being set up almost 200 chapters before it actually happened, and it wraps up Gojo's transcendent purpose as not only a sorcerer, but a person. It also teaches the readers a different way to go about helping those in their life who may not be in a good place. It's quite powerful, so yeah, try to check up on your people and let them know that you love them. With that said, I hope you guys enjoyed the video, and I'll catch you all in the next one. Peace out.